There are over 600 songs in the Kingdom Hearts series. If you asked me to name my favorite, I don't think I'd be able to. There's simply too many wonderful compositions to choose from. But if you asked me to name my least favorite, I'd give my answer in a heartbeat. That answer is, of course, Dual Hearts. I see your puzzled expressions, so let me give you some background. Dual Hearts is a song composed for Kingdom Hearts 3 by Takaharu Ishimoto. It appears in a single cutscene in Monstropolis, Confrontation with Vanitas, a moment which you and I know as Yeetus Vanitas. At first glance, Dual Hearts might be written off as a slower version of Enter the Darkness, Vanitas' main theme, but this composition hides a mountain of awfulness in its 4-minute and 22-second runtime. Since Dual Hearts was created to score a single cutscene, one could make the argument that, when you divorce the song from the cutscene it was made for, of course it's not going to hold up as well on its own. But I'm not letting Dual Hearts get away on that flimsy excuse. I will happily sit down and listen to songs like Heart of Mystery, The Victorious, and Roxas's Return all on their own, without the company of their designated cutscene. Same goes for nearly all of the KH3 cutscene tracks, pretty much. However, Dual Hearts is a deal breaker for me in any context. Now, let me get one more thing out of the way. I'm not hating on the song just because Ishimoto composed it. While I'll freely admit that he is my least preferred of the 3 main composers, I don't automatically dislike his Kingdom Hearts work. Flantastic Fight is pleasant enough, Dice and Shine and Eternal Moments are both keepers, and even though it's rough around the edges, I will defend Enter the Void until my dying breath. And let me just say, if Dual Hearts tickles your fancy, we can still be friends, I bear you no ill will. But with this video, I hope to give you some sort of understanding as to why I consider Dual Hearts the worst song in the Kingdom Hearts series. We'll be breaking down Dual Hearts piece by piece later on, but I think it's best we begin by addressing some of the larger compositional issues at play here. In several of his compositions, but in Dual Hearts especially, the way Ishimoto handles his instruments leads to a harsh and stilted tone. Take a listen to the opening passage and see if you could figure out what the problem is. Real string instruments have a natural ebb and flow to them and inherent sway to their volume. The problem with his opening passage is that every note is at the same volume level, and that level is all the way up. Every movement of the string player is heavy on the attack. There's no variation, no expression. Take another listen. The strings are uniform and aggressive. Not only is there no variation in the volume, Ishimoto doesn't make any attempt at adding articulations. Everything is just the same harsh tone with the volume turned as high as it can go, and this poor tone quality is carried throughout the piece. Now that we have an understanding of the problem, I must stress that the solution isn't out of reach. Programming the synthesizer is not too much to ask of a professional composer. It takes minimal time and effort to add a patch to the MIDI, and the impact it can have on the orchestra samples is monumental. To illustrate this issue with Dual Hearts' instrumentation, compare its introduction to this clip. The second clip you just heard was made by David Russell, of Green Requiem and Project Astati fame. He slapped that together for me in under 5 minutes, and yet even with this proof of concept, the difference is staggering. All David did was select 3 string samples from a MIDI library, choose a patch, and automate the volume. By just taking these few minutes to blend the samples, the string synthesizer is given a vastly more lifelike sound. Listen to the strings in any non-Ishimoto track in Kingdom Hearts 3, and tell me you can't hear the difference when rudimentary synthesizer programming and any level of articulation is applied to the orchestra samples. The strings grow and contract, the music comes alive and expresses something. Dual Hearts does none of that. It's not just the strings either. The vocals, brass, and even the percussion are all playing at max volume. Listen to this excerpt from later in the track. Ishimoto seems to be allergic to mixing. There's no attempts to blend the samples together, no effort made to produce a homogenized soundscape. The strings, the horns, the choir, the percussion, all of them are blaring at full volume. When we're listening to the piece, it's as though all the instruments are competing with each other, and the result is a loud and abrasive wall of sound. So, to summarize, the operation of the synthesizers in Dual Hearts suffers from a lack of mixing, articulation, and any sort of variance in dynamics or tone. While this is not wholly unique to Dual Hearts, the lethargic pace brings out this poor tone quality in a way that other Ishimoto tracks are better able to hide. What we end up with is a stiff and aggressive piece with instruments constantly fighting for your attention. Now that we have a better understanding of the general compositional shortcomings that contribute to Dual Hearts' harsh tone, let's take a closer look at the arrangement itself. We're going to examine the song bit by bit, and break down what makes it break down. In the context of the game, Dual Hearts starts when Vanitas enters the laugh floor. The first line is a statement of the main melody of Enter the Darkness. We've already discussed the issues with this opening 10 seconds at length, but just keep in mind that my comments on the unpleasant tone quality can be applied to the rest of the piece as well. After the intro, we have another statement of the Vanitas melody. These two measures repeat for, and I kid you not, over 70 seconds. This repetition is musically uninteresting and compositionally directionless. You are going to listen to it, and you are going to understand what I mean when I say that Dual Hearts is built off of copy and paste. Control V for Vanitas. We are a minute and 23 seconds into the piece, and 0 new musical ideas have been introduced since the start of the track. A third of the piece has passed, and all we've done is repeat the same segment at a grueling pace. Part of the problem is that there simply aren't enough moving parts to keep the listener's attention. We have the same ascending string ostinato on loop, with one central melody repeating above it. I would kill for an interesting harmony, a counter melody, anything really. Since we're dead set on repeating the same two measures of melody, why not some call and response? But no, the piece we're left with is best described as directionless, and this criticism applies to some of the later sections of Dual Hearts as well. I know we were pretty busy in that last part trying to wrap our heads around the complex melody, so I want to point out another issue you might have missed. In the section that begins around the 30-second mark, the low strings are subtly misaligned, an issue which compounds on the sluggish tempo. Guess what? 1 minute and 23 seconds in, and we finally get to hear the second line of Enter the Darkness. But there's a catch. The background harmonies and the leading melody are in 2 different keys. The resulting passage is, naturally, a disjointed mess. Ew. I'm honestly at a loss for words. I feel like it's the bare minimum of any composition to not forget its own key signature. And listen, I understand that Vanitas' whole character is supposed to be dark and unsettling, but in no world is this discordant disaster an intentional thematic decision. I don't know how else to express how fundamentally flawed this section of the piece is, so please, let's move on. This next 20 seconds has more clashing notes, more raw, unarticulated string synthesizers, and more overbearing percussion, but there are only so many ways I can explain why it doesn't work together. But please, Ishimoto, just give the percussionist anything else to do. We've reached the 2-minute mark, and this is where the statement of Roxas begins. In the cutscene, this happens when Vanitas focuses his attention on Sora. The Ventus section of Enter the Darkness isn't quoted till another 20 seconds after that, at which point Vanitas and Sora's conversation about Ven is well underway. Dual Hearts lingers on this Ventus melody for over a minute, which I could see as an inspired decision in the context of the scene, but once again we have a lack of any meaningful harmony, absolutely no adjustments to the tone of the melody notes, and every instrument at full volume. I'll just play the first part of it for you now. At 2 minutes and 47 seconds, we have one of the more obvious compositional errors, a cymbal crash that was duplicated, presumably another result of careless copy-pasting. After that, most of the instrumentation drops out and the piano takes the melody. In any other piece, this would be a softer, more expressive passage. But this is Dual Hearts, and every instrument is still playing as loud as it can. And let me just say, as a piano player myself, this song's handling of the MIDI keyboard is criminal. Every single note is hammered, and there's simply no trace of intentionality or phrasing. It's like every note was played by someone trying to squash a bug on the piano key by poking it with their pointer finger at a 90-degree angle. This next section is perhaps the most baffling. The low string backtrack is blatantly misaligned. There's no two ways about this one. The rhythm does not fit with the rest of the song. I have no idea how this was allowed into the game. I get that the development cycle of Cage 3 wasn't exactly pretty, but surely someone must have noticed that none of these notes work together. In this same section, the violin that's doubling the melody feels like it's starting to lag behind the piano. Whether or not this offset is intentional, it contributes to the messy and unpolished atmosphere. In the middle of this cacophony lies another frustrating decision. Listen to this phrase, particularly the cymbal. What does that cymbal build up to? Nothing. As a listener, when we hear the cymbal, we expect the piece to be moving forward. But Dual Hearts is meandering like its life depends on it. The cymbal doesn't carry us out of the ostensibly subdued piano section, it just creates empty tension leading to a climax that doesn't exist. I'm going to chalk it up to another copy and paste error, since the thought of it being a purposeful decision is concerning. After the statement of Ventus finally finishes looping, the piece returns to the main ascending pattern of Enter the Darkness Kingdom Hearts 3 version. I don't know if it was an intentional decision to cut out the part based on Sora's theme, but I could see a thematic argument for either including or removing the Sora statement, so I won't linger on it. Anyway, it is at this point when Sully makes Kingdom Hearts history with his bare hands, leaving Dual Hearts to fade out unceremoniously. But we're not done yet. All of my criticism, from the personal nitpicks to the glaring compositional flaws, have been leading up to one of the biggest tragedies of Dual Hearts. It could have been fixed. When the time came to release Dual Hearts on the Kingdom Hearts 3 original soundtrack, Ishimoto was given an opportunity to polish up the track. We've been listening to the original in-game version of Dual Hearts this entire time, so could it be that the OST mix addresses the piece's critical flaws and adds some much-needed polish? By my tone, I think you already know the answer to that. To Ishimoto's credit, the changes he did make were almost all improvements on the original, but many of the most egregious errors were left untouched. So let's quickly go through the album version and see how it differs from the in-game one. Our first change comes 10 seconds in. The balance of the choir has been changed. Make no mistake, the synthesized vocals are still playing every note at the same volume and with absolutely no articulation, but the string backing has been toned down and the overall dynamics have been taken down a notch. Sometimes, Ishimoto just changes the instruments in the OST release. In Dual Hearts, you can hear this around the 30-second mark, where the low choir has been swapped out for some higher voices. In the album version, Ishimoto also lightened up on the percussion. It's still the same measure-long beat on loop, but the volume has finally been changed to something other than the absolute maximum. You can hear that the other synthesizers too seem a bit lighter on the attack, which helps chip away at the harshness of the piece. Ishimoto's trademark brass interjections have also been dialed down. It no longer sounds like the horns are shouting at you. It's a small victory, but the tone of the other instruments is still just as unchanging and unpleasant as ever. There are similar balance changes throughout the piece, so to avoid redundancy, I'll fast forward to the next specific alteration in the arrangement. At 2 minutes and 53 seconds, Ishimoto removed a messy piano run, but neglected to fix the duplicated cymbal crash 6 seconds earlier. The biggest change in the OST version is the addition of an ending. Let me tell you, I was really hoping for the Ishimoto classic of holding out a random note after a choppy transition. The ending of Dual Hearts is a bit more involved, but to its own detriment. The album mix is 35 seconds longer than its in-game counterpart, but Ishimoto spends that time repeating the same 2 measures for the umpteenth time. The final part loops the piano rhythm with what might be a hint of a taste of dynamic contrast, but still with total disregard for voicing and articulation. On second thought, that might be my favorite part of Dual Hearts, since it means that the song is finally over. In summary, Dual Hearts is an unpolished mess that is plagued by an abundance of compositional oversights. The quality of sound suffers on a fundamental level from a lack of articulation, mixing, and dynamic contrast. This unpleasant soundscape is further impaired by directionless phrasing and grating and repetitive melodies. On top of that, Dual Hearts demonstrates a basic compositional deficiency, having large sections with harmonies written in the wrong key or heinously misaligned rhythmic patterns. While Ishimoto attempted to address some of the balance issues in the album release, it's little more than a band-aid on a gunshot wound. Dual Hearts remains, and shall forever remain, an unpolished and arguably unfinished disaster of a track that detracts from what should have been an impactful character moment. Between the constant abrasiveness of the synthesizers, the boring and uninspired melodic and harmonic lines, and the blatant compositional fumbles, there is no question that Dual Hearts is my least favorite song in the Kingdom Hearts series. Well, that was quite the adventure, wasn't it? Special thanks again to David Russell for helping me articulate some of the compositional patterns and graciously providing that quick and dirty string sample. And again, if you're someone who likes Dual Hearts, understand that it's nothing personal. It's just good business. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I promise my next video will be a little more upbeat. See ya then.